My name's Logan, this is the Outfall team, this is our second dev vlog, and basically we're going over some game ideas which we're all going to propose, and just try and get the best idea just for you guys. So Brandon, do you want to start?
I will start us off, lovely jubbly. So for my game idea, well, the name of my game is called Attack on 97 Avenue. It is a third-person shooter that utilises a round-based wave system with the addition of mini mission objectives, similar to what you may have seen in Call of Duty Zombies. It's going to take big inspiration from that, as well as some of my other competitors, as we'll discuss in a little bit. The whole point of this game is to encourage the player to explore the surroundings, familiarise themselves with the environment, so that when they get into those situations with our enemies, they know what they're doing, they're prepared to withstand as many rounds as possible, and get the most out of their experience. So just quickly looking into gameplay, very simple as I said, wave round based systems, numerous zombies that the player's got to defeat to progress on to the next round, bit of competition there in the sense of, oh, I've got to round 27, but I've now got to round 30, so I'm better than you. How the player defeats those enemies is through their means. They can use a variety of weapons, both melee or firearms, along with some power-ups as well, to try and create a little bit of a niche for myself, and try and make it feel a bit more action-packed rather than a Call of Duty Zombies again, which I think over the years it's become a little bit more diluted, a little bit more, you know what you're expecting, especially with its recent release in Vanguard. Absolute trash. So now I'm going to look towards the target audience and platform. I think since obviously Call of Duty, again, having to mention it again, PEGI 18 rating apply for a much older audience. For me, what I'm going for is that PEGI 16 rating, targeting more towards 16 to 35-year-olds. Because from one of the stats I found, since 2013 to 2021, in that age group specifically, there's been a greater increase of the amount of players that's come by, especially with last year, world pandemic. Don't need to discuss too much about it. As overall, generally, the number of gamers and gaming as a whole has risen incredibly. But in that age group, 92% of gamers in 2021 were in that age group. So that's quite interesting indeed. So there's a really nice, good market there, shows big audience to target. And then in terms of a platform, I'd like to go onto consoles. Obviously, a lot more people are going to have their home consoles, although PS5s and Xbox Series X's haven't been easy to come by, especially with the likes of PC gaming as well, especially graphic cards. But I'm going to mainly focus mine towards PCs, just because of, from a technological standpoint, the hardware that's in there, it's much more robust, a bit more, we can target a bit more towards what everyone's got, rather than a console which sometimes doesn't have that same power potential as a PC. And then in terms of a platform itself, I'm going to target more towards GOG.com, because for me personally, compared to the likes of Steam or Epic Games Store, GOG doesn't actually have a fee that you have to pay. So that's a really good incentive for small indie creators like myself, who can post on there, try and get a bit of a following there, and perhaps when there's a bit more reputation behind us, then we can move on forward to bigger platforms like Steam. And then I'll just go into the competition because
why not?
My narrative will be here forever. So as I said, competition-wise, Call of Duty Zombies obviously became pretty much that mode, specifically since its introduction in World at War, really made Call of Duty a bit of its own league, really popularised the game as a whole, because I know a lot of people, I know some of us in this room even, specifically, I'm looking at you, some of us have wanted to buy the game because of the Zombies mode specifically, because it's enriching the story, I think is the biggest sell point, and then just that natural theme of zombies and horror. It's a really good premise to include. In terms of trying to match an art style, Stubbs the Zombie, if anyone's played that.
No?
Stubbs the Zombie? No, quite an old game. 2005.
God.
It kind of matches what I want in the sense of that retro feel. No, because my game's targeted towards a 1920s New York setting, and some of the elements from that, like the outfits that the characters wear, and some of the environments kind of matches what visually I see for my game. And then finally as well, we've also got Plants vs Zombies again, similar art style, a bit more cartoony, a bit comedy to it, so that the player can find their own amusement in it, rather than just keeping it completely serious, making the player feel like, let's do it.
Is this the first person shoot one you're on about?
The first person shoot one. A bit of comedy allows the player to find their own amusement in it and make their own fun, something like you'd see in a Sam Moggs game. And I didn't touch on it, but I'm going to do it just now in terms of unique mechanics then. Obviously, in Call of Duty Zombies, there's always characters. I know there's a bit of lore behind them, but most of the time you don't actually get to choose those characters. So something a little bit that's going to separate mine. 4 playable characters. They've all got their own little backstory. It's all connected to why they're there, why they're in New York, how it connects to the story of the zombie apocalypse. They're also going to have their own separate loadouts, so everything's specialised to them. Different weapons, different power-ups, different play styles. So one of them might have a faster, more aggressive play style. One might be slower, but they're going to take more health or deal more damage. And then something I think can set it apart is, rather than just having zombies just get tougher and tougher after each round, and there's many objectives, zombie apocalypses aren't always the luckiest thing in the world. So from every start of the playthrough, there's going to be 3 fortune cards that are drawn out, and each of these 3 fortune cards will drastically affect the gameplay. So there might be an inverted mode where controls are switched over. There might be what was the other one? Like a flipped world mode, so perhaps you're playing it upside down or whatever.
God,
everyone's gonna love that idea, aren't they? And then just trying to see all big-headed mode. So there's a bigger target if you go for those headshots. Or an infected mode where after so much time you have to go and pick up a vial or something to reduce your health going down. Quite simple I'm going for, but trying to put a lot of emphasis on comedy and just making an experience that the player can find their own amusement in.
What's the name of the game again?
Attack on 97 Avenue.
Ooh. From how you mentioned cards, it's very similar to the... Is it like... So you're going for like a zombie survival game?
Yeah, like a zombie survival game.
Okay, so have you thought about like Left 4 Dead or a Back 4 Blood type competitor? Because in regards to cards and like different characters and stuff, Back 4 Blood has that to a T. It has different characters and different cards and stuff like that. Have you thought about how it might... Obviously the art style...
In some way, to the characters, as you say, but the gameplay really... It's incredibly serious. Play more of that horror genre, not really trying to... I know people can find their own fun in games, but that's one of those games I just don't see like there's a gnome there or whatever. It's like, zombie. So they're scaring the crap out of me. But it's like... Yeah, I can understand what you're saying there, but I just think... As I said, when you go for a comedy setting like this, you don't find that in COD Zombies, really. You don't find it in Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood.
So it's going to be more arcadey?
Yeah, more arcadey.
Yeah.
Something that, in some ways, pick up and play.
Are you open to questions now, or do you want to do some questions later?
We can do questions now, after the thing.
So I've got a few questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
But, you kind of mentioned when you were talking about this zombie apocalypse game, but you also mentioned like cartoon style, cartoon feel. You mentioned Plants vs Zombies, which kind of has that kind of light-hearted family style game, that kind of stuff. Is there a reason why you've kind of chosen to go down a party style game rather than a serious game?
Games need to make an impression. I think if you include something like bright colours rather than the same colour palette, it's instantly going to catch my eye. It's going to say, oh, that's what I want to play. And I think when you go and target something like that arcadey style, it's something instantly recognisable, because everybody would have seen that from the likes of a Pac-Man or a Mortal Kombat or whatever. Visually, it'll catch your eye, and it's that idea of capturing it straight away and then putting you in with the gameplay and stuff.
Do you feel like there's been a trend more towards that style rather than super realistic?
I feel like in some ways a lot of games are starting to lose realism. I know you mentioned Back for Blood there. Does have a bit of elements of a cartoony, because some of the zombies in there you're not really going to expect to see elsewhere. I just think as a whole, from a zombie genre though, it's a very much heavily used genre. But I think it's one that, as it's clearly shown, it still creates a lot of money, still creates a lot of buzz. And I think I'm still targeting a market that has still got a lot of life in it. It's just trying to create something new and fresh now in a genre that's kind of been a bit populated.
Second question, I've got 3 questions.
List them off. List them off, mysterious voice.
Is when you're talking about developing for the PC, how will that affect the development process in terms of getting feedback from clients and from audiences? Will PC have any benefits over, say, if you were developing for a console or a mobile game?
Well, that's the thing. PCs are starting to become, you can get powerful hardware for a lot smaller price tags. So that's starting to become something that everyone's starting to own. And when I say about the technological advantage that PC has, it's that idea that everyone potentially can have the opportunity to receive maybe a QA test, a beta or an alpha. Everyone contribute what they think to it, and because they've still got that potential in that limited hardware, it's that everyone's going to get a say in it, and it allows us to fine tune it really well, so that once we've got it right on this platform, we can then say, well, we want to push towards the consoles now. These are where we think a lot of people are still going to be. Let's go and push it out there by also getting the feedback from there as well.
Do you think it's harder to get feedback from people that play PC or have a console, or do you think it's a flip? Do you think it's easier to get feedback from people who play PC and distributing your products to people who play PCs?
I think it's kind of easier. I think, with PCs, you've got stuff like Discord. I know it appears on consoles and on your phones. But it sort of feels like that community, that really large community online, that you share something so little, like on YouTube, where you find a really small video, it ends up going massive and gains a lot of attraction. So there's stuff like Reddit, a lot of community forums where you can discuss new and upcoming ideas, a lot of platforms to share those small game ideas like game jams or itch.ios or GitHubs, whatever you want to use. There's platforms like that where you can say, this is my game idea, I'd like you to have a go and look at it. You can share comments, you can give it a try, and that's where I'm going to get that feedback from.
Final question. You mentioned about the card, like you roll the dice kind of thing. You get different challenges, as it goes through. From experience playing games that have that mechanic, there's a fine balance between having a challenging mechanic. So you mentioned the flipped controls and stuff, which from experience that's rather more frustrating than fun. So how are you going to balance and get feedback on these cards that are drawn, and how do you intend on fine-tuning those to make sure that you balance fun and frustration?
Well, as you said there, it's all about feedback. We've got to find what connects best with players. So as you said there, with the inverted controls, because sometimes it can be a bit frustrating. So you'll play for the first time and think, oh, this is quite a cool idea. And then you play 5 minutes and you'll be like, boy, this rubbish. It's that idea of reaching out to QA testers, giving them a list of what we want to see potentially come into the game, how they would feel about it, trying to incorporate it into a small little gameplay section for them to try out, and then say, do you like it? If not, we can take it out, perhaps refine it for a future use. It's all about connecting with those gamers in that testing stage, making sure we've refined everything, and then just saying, we're going to go with this. We might get some backlash for it, but we will constantly listen throughout and make sure that if this they don't like, then we will keep re-editing it until we get what we want. Cool beans. That's my game idea then. Who wants to go next?
Question first?
Oh, wait, let's ask one question.
Your game is solely for PC.
Yeah.
So, what is stopping you from optimizing your game for it to be well on console? Because when you look at games like World War Z, God of War, Spaghetti, what's stopping you from just optimizing it just enough for it to be on console? Because there's a lot of big games on console that have just come out on PC, like God of War, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I like to look at Cyberpunk as the best example. We all know how much of a train wreck that game is. But look what it was like on an older console, because the developers didn't take that into consideration, the hardware on that. It's just because PC, for me as a developer, you know, I'm a bit more specialised in that area. I feel a little bit more comfortable with working with that. You know, console, as I said, does have its benefits. Everyone's going to have the same hardware. So you know your limitations with that. In some ways, it's about trying to roll the dice, see what we can achieve with PC, and then say, okay, we've done this now. It's trying to make sure we can get that same great experience, but now putting it onto a perhaps lesser great hardware. And the same with like mobile. You know, mobiles, everyone's got one. Everyone's going to play a game. It's about trying to fine tune it and make sure that we know what we've got in the hardware there. Just trying to make sure can we support it.
Cool beans.